All right, today we're jumping into a really provocative book called Barren by E. Michael Jones. Now, Jones has a PhD from Temple University, but he's coming at this not as an economist, but as a cultural historian. And his take on capitalism is, well, it's pretty radical. He sees it not as a story of inevitable progress, but as a long, brutal conflict. So let's get right into it.
So Jones kicks things off in a place many of us will remember, the Occupy Wall Street protests. He was actually there, on the ground, and he noticed something strange. People were furious, but when he'd ask them, hey, what's the actual problem? Can you name it? They couldn't. One person even said their slogan should just be, we want. We want what, exactly? They knew something was fundamentally broken, but the name for it was lost.
And that's the big mystery the book sets out to solve. What is this invisible thing, this moral problem that no one could put their finger on that was making everyone so angry? Well, according to Barren, the answer is a single, very, very old word.
That word is usury. Now you might be thinking, oh, that's just charging crazy high interest on a loan. But Jones argues we've totally forgotten its original meaning. In the ancient and medieval world, it was seen as an act against nature itself. The idea was that money is barren metal. It's dead. It can't reproduce. So making it breed more money through interest was seen as this unnatural, parasitic act that chokes out the real source of wealth, which is, actual human work.
And this right here, this is the core thesis of the entire book. This is Jones's definition of capitalism. He says it's a system built to do two things. First, it systematically promotes usury, making the whole financial system run on it. And second, that system is always accompanied by what he calls the systematic theft of labor, which is just a way of saying that the people doing the work never get paid the full value of what they create.
So, the big question is, how on earth did we get here? I mean, how did Western society go from believing usury was a mortal sin to building its entire global economy on it? The book's answer is that it wasn't some slow, gradual change. It was a violent, sudden break with the past.
Let's just look at the two systems side by side. It's night and day. In the old guild system, the whole point was the common good. You had just prices, just wages. Things like cutthroat competition were actually outlawed. And usury? Banned. Now, look at what replaced it. The goal is now pure self-interest and profit. Labor isn't part of a community anymore. It's just a thing to be bought and sold. And usury goes from being banned to being the absolute engine of finance. It's a total flip.
So what caused this massive flip? According to Jones, the trigger was a Protestant Reformation. But he frames it less as a theological dispute and more as, in his words, a gigantic looting expedition. In England, when the monasteries were dissolved, it meant the seizure and privatization of 900 years of accumulated public wealth. We're talking land, buildings, hospitals, schools, all of it gone from the community and into private hands, just like that.
And the consequences, well, the book paints it as a complete social catastrophe. This common land was given to a new class of landlords who didn't even live there. A new financial class popped up to lend money against all this new private property. And what about the average person? For them, it meant mass poverty. It created a class of people with nothing to sell but their own labor. And when they, understandably, rebelled against this, they were crushed.
Okay, so you've just created a new economic reality based on principles that everyone used to think were flat out immoral. What do? You can't just leave it at that. According to Barren, you have to invent a whole new philosophy, a new science even, to justify what you've done. You have to make it seem natural.
Jones uses this quote from Adam Smith as a perfect example of this new way of thinking. Smith is describing a landlord who basically fires 1,000 of his workers so he can afford a pair of fancy diamond buckles. He's trading their livelihood for his own luxury. But here's the twist. Smith doesn't see this as a tragedy. He sees it as progress.
And right there, Jones argues, is the birth of a totally revolutionary new moral idea. Private vice leads to public good. The landlord's greed, his selfish desire for bling, is actually what drives the economy forward and makes everyone better off. All those things that used to be seen as vices you had to control, like greed, vanity, appetite, were now being celebrated as the very engine of society.
But it went even deeper than that. The book argues that this new ideology got projected onto, well, everything, the entire universe. It's like they put on capitalism-colored glasses. So Isaac Newton's universe becomes a place of competing external forces, not a place with any inner meaning or purpose. And later, Darwin's vision of nature is all about a brutal competition for survival. Suddenly, conflict and strife aren't just features of the economy, they're the fundamental laws of reality itself.
Now, Newton famously said this, which basically means, I'm not making stuff up, I'm just reporting the facts. He claimed total objectivity. But Jones argues this was actually an incredibly powerful rhetorical move. By saying, I have no bias, you can basically bake your own cultural and economic biases right into the laws of physics, and no one will question it. It makes your worldview seem like an objective fact of nature.
So what happens when you actually build a society on these principles? What's the endgame? Well, the book argues that a system based on usury isn't just a moral problem, it's also structurally doomed to fail. It's inherently unstable, leading to these devastating and completely predictable cycles of boom and bust.
And here's the mechanical flaw at the heart of it as the book explains it. Because of compound interest, the amount of debt in the system always grows faster than the real economy, the part that actually makes stuff. It's a mathematical certainty. So eventually, the debt bubble gets so big it has to pop. This leads to a destructive cycle of debt and deflation. And this isn't seen as a bug in the system. This is the system working as designed.
To see how this works, Jones looks at the historical fall of the great Medici Bank. It's like a row of dominoes. First, you get over-indebtedness, too much credit, too many loans. Then, something spooks the market, and you get distressed selling, as everyone rushes to sell assets to pay their debts. Of course, that causes a price collapse, which in turn leads to a credit contraction. Banks get scared and call in more loans. And the final domino, widespread business failures, and the whole economy just grinds to a halt.
Let's jump forward a few hundred years, though, because these aren't just abstract financial cycles. They have a real human cost. 266. That's how many people died in a single workhouse in Skibbereen, Ireland in just 3 months during the Great Famine.
And this is where the ideology becomes deadly. During the famine, the British government did offer relief, but it came with a catch. You had to work for it. The problem was, the wage they paid was what the book calls a literal starvation wage. It was mathematically impossible to buy enough food to stay alive on what they paid you. The abstract principle of a free market that shouldn't be interfered with was considered more sacred than actual human life. The system had to be preserved, no matter the body count.
So, at the end of the day, Barren Metal forces us to ask a really fundamental question. What even is economics? Is it a neutral science like physics with cold, hard laws that we just have to live with? Or is it what the ancient world thought it was? A branch of morality, something that's supposed to be about justice and purpose and how we ought to live together? Because according to Jones, the answer you give to that question, well, it changes everything.